Welcome everyone. As we're waiting to get everyone out of the waiting room, we'll just ask you to bear with us for a couple of minutes. It'll take just a few minutes as people come out of the waiting room. I do ask that you please mute your microphone as you're coming in. It'll help us keep the background noise to a minimum. It'll help everyone hear a little more clearly as we're going through our presentations. So welcome, and we're going to get started in just a couple of minutes as we make sure we get everybody in out of the waiting room. It's great to have you all here this evening. Lexi, how's it looking? How are we doing?
Good. We're just waiting on two to join.
Okay. While we're waiting for that, I will start the introductions and just a little bit of logistic information. Glad to have you. My name is Bill Arnold, and I serve as Senior Director of Alumni and Family Engagement here at Alma College. And so it's a pleasure to have all of you on joining us this evening as we spend some time talking about what you can expect as a family member of an incoming student here at Alma College, helping that transition, helping you prepare, helping your student prepare to come into Alma College and be successful. We have a group of staff members joining us this evening to cover some particular areas of the campus that are relevant to first year, especially relevant to first year families. We also have members of our parent and family board who are current parents of current students that will share their inside perspective with you on what it was like for them and some tips and suggestions from their perspective. So we're going to move through that this evening, and we'll take questions from all of you as well as they come in. We had some submitted previously, so we do have some of those already available. But if you have a question as we move throughout this evening, please feel free to enter that in the chat area. And if you aren't familiar with Zoom, if you're on a laptop or a computer, if you scroll across your screen with your mouse, you'll see a menu appear at the bottom of or the top of your window that says chat, a little bubble. If you click on that, it'll open a separate window and you can enter a question there, and we'll be monitoring that and posing those questions and responding to those questions as we go throughout this evening. So again, glad to have you with us and excited to answer your questions and share some information about the college. Areas that we're going to focus on specifically tonight include our Tartan 101, which is our new student orientation program, as well as some transitions to campus. Counseling and wellness and health, our health area will be covered there. Also talking about our disability services and accommodations. Also looking at athletics for those of you that have students who are athletes, what type of support structures are in place and preparation for student athletes, a particular area for us to be covering. And then also any questions that you have beyond that, we're happy to entertain those and give a response to that, or make sure that we get information directed to you. So before we jump into those specific areas though, I'm going to invite Amanda Selinsky, who's our Vice President for Admissions and Enrollment, to give an update specifically about our vaccination policies and what we're anticipating, because we know that's kind of top of mind. We're still in the pandemic, and we know that it's not going away completely before the fall. So we'd like Amanda to start us off with providing those updates around our policies and what we're anticipating for the fall. So Amanda?
Thanks, Bill, and thank you all for joining us today. As Bill mentioned, my name is Amanda, and I oversee admissions for the college, and then I also oversee President's Office operations, and I serve on our COVID task force team for the college. I am joined by another colleague, Ann Lambert, who oversees all of our counseling, health, and wellness for the college, so she will also fill in if I miss anything this evening as we're talking a little bit about this. As probably expected, we got many questions about what the college's stance is going to be on the COVID vaccine, and then also about questions about COVID response as a college. We have been very successful in our COVID response. We were able to maintain our in-person classes all of last year, so we have no doubt that we will do the same for next year. We were only just a few days shy when there was that spike in November where classes and colleges had to close, but we were 3 days away from the end of the term. So we truly were open and in person all year, and we anticipate the same for next year. That is a true Alma experience, so that's what we anticipate. We have moved forward with many changes on campus, and as we go through our COVID response, such as we are no longer using face coverings or masks for anyone who is vaccinated. We also are bringing back gatherings, small and large group events, things of that nature. So we are moving forward in a way that we believe that come fall, unless something in the situation changes, it will be, of course, slightly different because we are still in a global pandemic, but much more similar to a traditional Alma College experience as students have experienced pre-pandemic. One of the big questions that is definitely a hot topic right now is whether or not Alma and other colleges will require the COVID vaccine. At this time, we are highly encouraging, but we are not requiring. We do require other vaccinations, and that's something that your student will complete some forms for us over the summer. At this moment in time, that is our policy as a college. So we're highly encouraging students to do so for a couple of reasons. One is if they are unvaccinated, they will get tested for COVID regularly throughout the week. That is a part of our COVID response strategy that helps us to not have spread of COVID on campus since we are a residential community. The other piece is, especially for student athletes, what we have found, and Kiana can attest to this when she talks a little more about athletics if there are questions, but we had practices and quarantining do not go really well together. So like missed games, missed practices, if you're in quarantine, it's hard. And if you are vaccinated, your quarantine regulations, and is that the right word, policies, what you have to follow are very different. So we are encouraging all students to do that before they come back to campus so that they are fully vaccinated, which for all 3 vaccines is 2 weeks after the final dosage before they arrive onto campus. We will most likely require that students either come to campus with a negative COVID test when they move in or proof of vaccination, so one or the other. So we are very much about choice at Alma College, so we will have pathways for students in both decision-making processes. However, we want to make sure that we're protecting our campus community as much as possible. And anything else you'd add at all?
I would just add that, yeah, the good news, if you are vaccinated and a student and you were exposed to someone with COVID, you do not have to quarantine or isolate unless you've got symptoms. So that does really allow students to continue with their education. And that quarantine isolation is hard for anyone who has been in that position.
Happy to pause if there's any more questions. I think what I talked about covered the questions we received in advance, but Ann and I are happy to answer any additional questions around those pieces. I did also want to mention that usually our president, Jeff Abernathy, is able to be with us for these events. We actually are welcoming our very first cohort of Masters of Fine Arts students today, along with the faculty. So they all just arrived. So he is currently hosting them all at his house, which is why he's unable to make it today. He sends his greetings and wishes he could be here and is excited to see everyone here, all the students here shortly this fall.
Okay, so there is that. You see
Yeah,
that
there's one
question
more.
pop in, Amanda?
Yep, and Ann, you're the expert on this. So if a student already had COVID, what are the requirements around testing?
Yeah, so if someone already had the COVID-19 virus, there's a 90-day window that a student would not need to test. So there's 90 days that the health department recommends no testing. After that 90 days, then they would have to resume testing. So 90 days from the test date. So hopefully that helps.
There's
And I think we have another
question about what do you do when a student does get sick?
So I'm assuming you're saying if a student does get sick with COVID. So we have an amazing care team here. So there are lots of parties involved. So if someone is sick and has symptoms, we do have, and I'll be talking a little bit about our medical services, a nurse on campus through our Wilcox Medical Center, and she would be in touch, provide medical care. We also have an on-call nurse, Pat Lukemeyer, who's wonderful, who's available 24/7 for students. We would talk about options for quarantine and isolation. This year, we don't really have that many spaces on campus, so students should plan on making plans to quarantine and isolate at home if possible. We will work with them academically in terms of with faculty ensuring that they can keep up with classes and continue on as a student. If they do need quarantine isolation space, we do have that here on campus. We have food delivery, mail delivery, basically a whole care team of people. So whatever they need, we're here to take care of them, any questions they have. And we work with our local health department real closely. I worked with our health department so closely, so much. Lisa's our health department public nurse. Her daughter will be here next year. So maybe on this call, I don't know.
Great, thanks, Anne. And there's a question in here that actually is a nice segue for us into kind of orientation related. And so Laura Rieger, who's our Assistant Director for First Year Engagement, who is leading our student orientation programs. Laura, I'm going to ask you to say a few words about our Tartan 101 and our Becoming a Scott Days, and then we can touch on these questions about attending parent orientation, and then also about registering for classes and those things. So you want to go ahead and start, Laura, and then we'll go from there.
Sure, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Really glad to be here and to see you all tonight. As Bill said, my name is Laura Rieger, and I serve as the Assistant Director for First Year Engagement here at the college. And so part of my role involves our Becoming a Scott Day events, which are coming up in July, and we are very excited about those. So hopefully your student has signed up. Those will be taking place July 20th, 21st, 22nd, 27th, and 28th. And they should have received information and they can sign up for those. Right now, we are saying one parent or supporter, but they can contact their admissions representative and make arrangements. So we have had a few cases, but we're asking them to work with their admissions reps if they need to bring another parent or supporter to those events. So certainly options for that. And their reps are working with them to do that. So we're very excited to welcome in person. So these are some of our first bigger events that we're going to be having on campus. So that's exciting. And our event kicks off on those days at about 9:30 a.m. With registration, and then concludes about 3:30 with some optional pieces from 3:30 to 5. And so are almost done with our finalized schedule, and then we will be able to get that out and posted up on the website. So very, very excited to welcome you and your student to campus for those events. And I don't know how much do you want me to give more information, or there will be tracks during that day. So there will be times where families are together in the morning and in the afternoon, and then there will be separate tracks. So students will be on one track, and then parents and supporters will be on another track to get various information pertinent to both of those groups. So, but we will have you together at the beginning over the lunch time frame, because there will be lunch in a campus resource fair and expo with some of our local on-campus offices and some of our Munch Money partners as well. And then we'll also be doing housing tours through the 2 first-year buildings. So hopefully we'll be able to get you in to see a showroom and an empty room in each of the buildings where your student may be living. So that's kind of a rundown of Becoming a Scott Day. Tartan 101 kicks off on Thursday, August 26th with Move In. So your student will move in, and there will be a designated time slot that they sign up for to do that. And then it's about a 4-day long series of events. So we've got some fun things, some educational things. Through that entire process, they will have a first-year guide. So that is an upper class student at Alma College. Each of those, we've got 24 first-year guides on staff, and each one is assigned to a first-year seminar course. So that'll be about 20 students in each group. So there are big group activities, things, a lot of the fun things like the Hypnotist. We've got Think Fast, which is an interactive game show. We're doing a welcome back barbecue and a band. And then we have a really special event that takes place during Tartan 101, which is called our Traditions Dinner. And that's a great way for our first years to come together with the Alma community and many of our faculty and staff members, and really learn what it means to be an Alma Scot. And there's nice traditions. Each student generally gets a little evergreen tree that's meant to symbolize their growth and development through their 4 years at the college. So that's a really exciting and special time for our students. And then we'll do some small group events with their guides. So they'll have ice cream with their academic advisors. We're going to have a pizza with a professional event. So that will include some faculty and staff members, possibly first-year seminar instructors, and then other staff at the college to be a part of that. Trying to think if I'm missing something. And the first-year guides will be with students throughout the entirety of the first semester. So they will be working, like I said, they'll be paired with those first-year seminar classes, and they will be trained to mentor and guide students through those transitions that take place through the first year. So whether, you know, that's just general adjusting to college, or homesickness, or, you know, academic success, things like that, they will have a lot of training on those various transitions that first-year students may be facing, and be able to work with your student.
Thanks, Laura. A couple of questions that have jumped in. Earlier was one about when do students begin to register for classes? You want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I can do my best. I do know that that should be coming up, I think, starting next week. I don't know the ins and outs of that specifically. Lexi, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, so you're right on the nose. So communication will be sent out by the end of June. So all communication will go through the student's Alma email. How you access that is through your student portal. Private chat me if you don't know how to access that. I can help you. And through the communication, your student can then set up a one-on-one meeting with their academic advisor to talk about their first-year plan, but also their 4-year plan too. And they can look at the transcripts of classes that they're taking currently, any AP or dual enrollment classes that they're transferring in to really find the right plan for them. But communication for it will happen soon.
Great, thanks, Lexi. There was a question about the August 26th move-in date. Is that just for first-year students? Is that for returning students? You want to talk a little bit about that? And then there's another question about someone who's in marching band, and that Dave Zerby had communicated about moving in on the 17th. And do they need to sign up? So you want to talk a little bit about that move-in schedule, Laura?
Yeah, I will certainly do my best, but that is definitely something that's would have been in Nicholas's wheelhouse. So the Thursday, August 26th is specifically for our first-year students. So if you're not a student who's coming back early, so we will have many first-year students coming back, or even transfer students who come back for things like athletics, marching band, cheer and stunt. So various groups do arrive on campus sooner than August 26th. And that information, I believe, will generally come from coaches or Dr. Zerby. And there may be also information that comes to their Alma email specifically from the Residence Life email as well. In the past, I'm trying to remember about early move-ins, but they have used something like Sign Up Genius, and they'll block off specific slots and things like that. So I'm not sure. I know we used that last year, especially with COVID restrictions. I'm not sure if they will continue to use that, but I believe so. Because I know that they're grouping first-year student move-in on that Thursday, August 26th.
Yeah. So and again, as Laura was saying, if your student is involved in a sport or band or some type of extracurricular piece that is an early move-in, they will be hearing directly from their coach or the band director or whoever is in charge of that program around details of when that date is and how to go about making arrangements to do that. So they'll be getting individual, because it's depending on the sport, depending on the group, it might be a different date. And so it's all variable, and they should be looking and communicating with their respective coach or director of their program. I'm trying to look at just to check the Q&A here.
There was
Is
a
there
second part of the question. When students move in earlier, do they have access to the dining halls? I don't know if Laura, you have the answer for that.
Yes, so coaches or whoever is bringing in early arrival groups generally work with Sodexo, our dining services provider, to get them a list of students. And so it's a little bit different than it is during the year. So I don't know if, I don't think they swipe their ID cards to eat, but generally the coaches or whoever provide a list to the dining services provider. And then yes, those meals are covered, usually I think out of departmental budgets or that, but they will be fed. So that there's not a need to worry about that.
Yeah, so I think we got that covered. Yes, so definitely we'll be feeding them. They won't be on their own while they're moving in and here for practices and all of those preps. There was a question in the original piece, and it touches a little bit maybe in your area, Laura, about whether there's a message board for students that are looking for a ride home with another student, especially if they live out of state. And I know that we do have transportation available, especially for students that live out of state that maybe need to get to an airport. We have specific shuttle times from Elma to the airport for those students, and we arrange that and make sure students are aware that they can sign up on those dates. We set specific dates around each break and time that a student may be looking to go home. Do you know if I don't think there's actual sort of physical message board anymore. There used to be back in the olden days when I was a kid and a student here, but that was a long time ago. So we don't have a literal bulletin board anymore. But maybe Amanda or Laura, you have some thoughts about, is there a message board or a ride share a way for students to connect?
So what we always recommend is that students join their class of social media pages. And so Lexi can put those links into the chat. It's just for your student though. So we ask that the parents follow the regular Alma College social media. We will not accept your request if you are not one of our students. So we actually verify it before we say yes. But we will have a lot of communication there. So between students. So students really use that to really communicate with each other, especially before they arrive to campus. The other piece that happens naturally, because we are a residential campus, is a lot of just word of mouth communication. So our students eat together, live together, go to class together, practice together. So that really is how a lot of this stuff will happen. They Snapchat each other all the time. They're tweeting, they do all the things. And so that's usually how those pieces will work. We do offer transportation services around major breaks, and then we do have a number of transportation options on campus. So first year students can bring cars onto campus. That's an option for anyone. But we also offer free to charge to students a service around the town of Elma. So if a student needed to go to the pharmacy or the grocery store or anything in town, it's if Uber and a bus met and had a kid, it would be what we have. So you call like you would Uber, and then they show up and then they pick you up like a bus would and then drop you off like a bus would. And so that is free to students. They just need to show their ID. So that will allow them the opportunity to travel around campus as needed. We're also a super walkable, bikeable area. And so that also helps students if they don't want to bring a car into campus. And truly, as I'm an Alma graduate, and actually Laura and I went to college together. And then I'm celebrating my 11th year as a staff member as of yesterday. I have heard so rarely about students having trouble finding a way when needed. And so I can assure you that it works well, even though it's a little bit less formal than say a set message board or something similar. But the residence life staff is also happy to connect students if ever they run into something that they really don't know how else to handle.
I think another piece too, your student can definitely, Amanda just touched on this, residence life. So their resident assistant is a great resource. Their first year guide can be another great resource. I know I was an out-of-state student. I not like super far. I lived in Ohio, but I was able to connect with other people. Like Amanda said, just through the connections you make on campus, and then we figured out how to share rides and things like that. And it's pretty amazing how naturally it does happen on a small campus. So I know it was something I was worried about, and very quickly it was something that just alleviated itself.
But I want to recognize that we do have a parent of a current, one of our current parents, Jody Cowan, is on. She and her daughter are from Wisconsin. So Jody, I don't know if you have any want to add in or chime in at all about that piece from an out-of-state perspective, and or any of our other current parents who are on, if you have a perspective you want to share quickly about how maybe you managed that, if there was any transportation concerns, or how your son or daughter juggled any of those things.
Yeah, as we know, last year was a very odd year. So my daughter was on the dance team, and we had pretty strict guidelines as far as they were not allowed to take public transportation. So we didn't utilize any of that, but I am really looking forward to, I was actually just Googling flights for Thanksgiving break. So I'm super excited about utilizing the transportation options to and from the airport, so that I don't have to do the 12-hour round trip and go get her anymore. So.
Okay. There was a question about how does parking work for first-year students? So maybe Lexi or Amanda, you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, so registration for parking passes will begin July 12th. So students will receive communication about that. There are different lots that are assigned to different color stickers. So there's teal, there's orange, there's I think like a pink, there's a silver lot as well. The price for the parking passes depend on the parking lot. So if you would like specific pricing, I can definitely send that out to everyone as well, but they are first come, first serve. So highly recommend logging in as early as possible, because the ones closer to the resident halls will definitely go a lot faster. But if you visited campus, you can see that everything is within walking distance. And as Amanda mentioned earlier, we do have that transportation on campus as well. So they can take you to a car or to our Meyer Walmart or even downtown Alma as well.
Yeah, and so, and of course, as Lexi said, the closer to the buildings will go first, but literally I can tell you, you can get from anywhere on campus to the other side of campus in about 5 minutes. So even though, if that, Amanda, well, it depends on how fast you, Amanda's saying 10, I'd say 5. So, I guess it depends on stride length, but so you can assure your students that it's not that far if they don't get right outside their residence hall. There's a question that came up, and it's actually, I think, it's appropriate transition, because Ann Lambrecht, who's our Associate VP for Student Life, who oversees all of our counseling, health, and wellness, is the next person that we were going to have share some comments. And one of the questions was to review the medical support staff and options. So Ann, that seems like a perfect segue to you. You want to share a little bit more about our health, wellness, and health services?
Absolutely. So I'll start out with health services and then move into counseling. And then I also want to talk just briefly about student health insurance. So health services on campus, we do have the Wilcox Medical Center here on campus. So we have services right here on campus. They are open with a provider Monday through Thursday, 8:30 to 5, and are closed over the lunch hour. It works kind of a combination of an urgent care, kind of like where you can just walk in. And we're hoping to go back to walk in. This last year, we weren't able to do that because of COVID. Everyone had to be pre-screened. Medical offices were a little bit different. And we also then have the ability for students to make appointments, and we also have virtual visits as well too for students. Our provider, Renee Kern, is a nurse practitioner who's on staff. We contract with our employees through Mid-Michigan Medical Center, so that's a great partnership, and it also allows us for quicker referrals to specialists as well too in the area if students need to get that referral. So she's here on campus. We also will continue on with Pat Lukemeyer, who's also a nurse practitioner who is on call for students who either fill out their daily health screening. They actually call any student who fills out any symptom on the daily health screening, either Renee or Pat, checks in with them, asks them how they're doing, and we'll follow up as well too on their health just to see how things are going. So that's something I was really proud of the level of service they provided to students who had questions and concerns. And so that is our health center here on campus. We're also very fortunate to be 1 mile away from an urgent care. Mid-Michigan Medical Center has an emergency room, hospital, and an urgent care very close by to campus. As my son would say, when he was a student here, it's walkable. He was a nursing student and you'd see him walking all the time to his placement. But there's also transportation too. So that's very close by. And also our hospital has an inpatient 24-bed inpatient psych unit, which is usually unheard of in a town the size of Alma. So we have really good quality medical services very close by here at Alma. We also have a variety of pharmacies. If you're looking at transitioning the pharmacies, we've got a Meyer Pharmacy, Walgreens, Rite Aid, Walmart, and then we have an independent family pharmacy, and they actually deliver to campus. They do not come into the residence hall, but they'll meet the student like at the tennis courts or an outside location because they don't have a key card to swipe in, but they do deliver right here to campus, and they've been great to work with in terms of insurances. Sometimes they'll even deliver right here to the Wilcox Medical Center, and the student can come down and pick up their prescription here. So that's also been just a wonderful service too. So hopefully that answers questions about kind of our healthcare providers here on campus. In terms of, and in the community, because our community is a great resource. In terms of counseling services, we have a counseling center here on campus. Is a little bit different than health services. Health services are billed to your insurance, and I'll get a little bit into insurance a little bit here. Counseling services are free of charge. We have a psychiatric service provider who comes in once a week to work with students that are referred from their counselor or who are transitioning their care. They can call and ask about that. And then we have free counseling services as well too. So a little bit about that. I also, the independent pharmacy that delivers, I think it's called Family Pharmacy, if I'm remembering correctly.
Alma Family Pharmacy.
Alma Family Pharmacy. Nothing like the word family in there. Yes. So if you want to look that up in Google, and please don't hesitate to call me if you have any questions on just transitioning, any type of healthcare issues or any questions you have. You can also call Renee. She's back in mid-August if you have any questions just in terms of your medical needs. Both of my sons were type 1 diabetics. I know sometimes there are health conditions where you're looking for certain things or you have more questions. I'd be happy to talk with you or help you kind of work through any concerns that you have. On the insurance end, Alma College does require all students to have health insurance. We do offer a student health insurance plan. I will be emailing information out about that here at the end of June. All students will get that email. They do have to fill out a form every year. It's online. It's really quick, and upload a copy of their health insurance card to waive out of our health insurance plan, but it's very reasonably priced, and it's a Cofinity plan. So if you are looking at any point or you lose health insurance, please remember the only reason we broker a plan is when you broker healthy students together, you can get better rates than if you're out on the marketplace. So no, if you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to talk to you about that further, and you'll be getting more information.
Great, thanks, Ann. So if you have any questions around any of those things that Ann covered, please feel free to enter that in the chat. I want to pause at this moment too and ask any of our current parents, certainly you don't have to disclose personal information, but experiences your students have had that might be helpful in terms of their healthcare or support services, your experiences with that as a family that you might want to share as kind of firsthand experience.
Yeah, I'm willing to do that. Thanks, Bill. For everyone, my daughter, Sophia, is going into her junior year at Alma. And she has had to use the healthcare services there a little more than one would have originally anticipated. Beginning with actually having to take advantage of the COVID positive isolation and care center there that was provided. My wife and I have been impressed with the quality of care that she received, not only during that period, but then some other subsequent issues related to strep or other various things where she's had to receive local medical care, all very, very top shelf. So we were comforted by that for sure.
Thanks, Don.
I'd second that. Thankfully we only had one interaction with the health center, and it was for something pretty minor, but my daughter called me and, expressed that she wasn't feeling well and was getting very, very, very upset because we're 6 hours away, and that's tough for both the mom and the daughter the first time that happens. I actually picked up the phone and called Robin, and told her that I asked her to go to the health center. She wouldn't. Robin called her, talked her through it, and then called me back and talked me off the ledge. So I have huge kudos because, sometimes the mom needs a little bit more than the kid does. So I'll second Don's. They're great there.
Thanks, Jody. And that really is, I will just echo that part of the reason we're doing these events and that we will continue to do events throughout the year for our parents and family members is we know that you're going through this as well. We certainly are working with your students, but this is a family thing here. And we know that you're experiencing this and want to be as supportive for you and all the things, the transitions that take place for parents and family members as well. So appreciate that. I think we've handled all of the questions related to that. And I want to shift now to Phil Andre, who's our Director of Academic Support Services and actually a lecturer here on campus in our Integrative Physiology and Health Science program. Phil's going to share a little bit about our disability services and our accommodations for students. Phil?
Thanks, Bill. Hi, everybody. Like Bill said, I'm Phil Andre, our Director of Academic Support Services. One of the items that falls underneath our umbrella is the disability support services. Thinking about classroom accommodations, housing accommodations, things of that nature. So oftentimes when we think about academic accommodations, we might think back to high school years of someone had an existing IEP or a 504 plan. Something that they used to help them, navigate academics and, be able to obviously access the learning in the way that they needed, right? For their particular, diagnosis for which they had in terms of like a learning disability or some other type, of challenge there. And we certainly work with a variety of ways to help, mitigate that and work with students for what their needs are. We've had things such as extended test time. I have read exams to students who are more sensory learners, which is fun when you're doing it with a subject that maybe you have not studied yourself in quite a few years. So that's always a fun challenge. But it's nice to work with students one-on-one because I know sometimes there are going to be those questions. So the ability to work with them individually, have conversations with our disabilities coordinator who's within our department, and get those accommodations established. It's a really great thing just to be able to help, decrease the stress or any anxiety or questions that might come with that. We can work with the provider that your student has worked with, or if they feel as though that maybe there's something that went undiagnosed for a period of time. And now that they're in college and something has come to light, we can help get them connected with their provider, whether that be a counselor, a physician, a PA, whoever might be the most appropriate person in that instance, to help get that set up. In terms of classroom accommodations, professors will receive a letter from that student. The student will hand the letter to each professor such that it's coming from the student and not our office. It's something that we ask of our students just so that we're not giving out, obviously, their medical protected information, but that it gives a little bit of engagement on behalf of the student to activate that accommodation each term with their professors. Housing accommodations, we do have things such as also emotional support animals. So we have dogs and cats on campus. We've even looked at other animal types such as rabbits and things like that, whatever might be recommended by the provider. In that instance, there are steps and procedures to follow for this. I will put a link to our website in the chat once I'm done discussing this. And then, a lot of times too, we're working with students just with more, generalized or more broad academic support types of offerings. And that might be working on time management skills, study skills, things that maybe they didn't have to think about as much in their high school days, but now they have this one course and it's challenging and they love it. But, there's that stress and that anxiety that comes with it. We can work on providing tools, developing plans, meeting with them on a weekly basis. And it's a really gratifying experience for us to see the hard work that students really put into this to realize that academic success. They have it. It's just realizing it in different ways and using different tools that maybe they haven't had to do prior to that. So I'm happy to, field any questions that folks might have for that process.
Sure. Phil, there was one question put in that's related to what kind of documentation is needed from the family side to continue the 504 plan.
So I will put that link in the chat because it is a step-by-step process. And one of the things that's going to be included as part of the documentation is a letter from the provider. So again, that could be family physician, that could be a counselor, that could be a provider with whom the student has an existing relationship and has worked with. So that will be part of that documentation. And we ask that the provider then answer usually between about 3 and 4 different prompts, just so that we have a clear idea, one, what is the challenge that we're working with, but 2, what's recommended, right? How can we best serve that student's needs in an efficient way that then we can work with our faculty as well and ensure that your student is getting what he or she needs in that case. I will put that link into the chat.
Okay, thanks. And Phil, I'm not sure if this is something that you can respond to, or we might have to get one of our residence life folks to respond. But there was we have a situation where the roommates are paired, and the one roommate has accommodations for a special room, and so they want to know, how do they sign up, because the roommates said that they can't pick a room because they need that specific accommodation, but then this other student is saying, I need to sign up for a room. Do you know how they manage that?
In terms of the roommate aspect, I'll be honest, I do not. But in terms of the housing accommodation, we do have the steps for that student to then apply for the housing accommodation, whether it would be something that is closer to a restroom facility or closer to a kitchen, has the needs of whatever, whether it be a dietary restriction or something with allergies. It could be an air conditioner because of allergies and seasonal things that pollutants that might be in the air and such. In terms of the roommate, Laura, I saw that you had placed something in the chat here. Would you like to jump in?
Yeah, I can jump in. I would advise, so sometimes there are pieces through the online system. So when special circumstances like that exist, the residence life staff needs to go in sort of on the back end and make those pairings and select the room. And so they would get confirmation so Phil's office generally sends over to the residence life office any special accommodations like that, and or if you or the future roommate contact residence life, they'll just verify with Phil's office that yes, these accommodations exist, and then they can usually go in on their end and pair students. Sometimes when that exists, students can't do it themselves. So
and the residence life office actually helps make the decisions too for specific housing accommodations. So they'll be well in tune with what the specific scenarios are in terms of roommates, and if one roommate does then have a housing accommodation in place.
Okay, thanks. And Janine, we'll have our Residence Life staff reach out to you as well and make sure you get everything, information that you need to make sure you get those housing situations taken care of. So I want to now, thanks Phil for covering that information. I want to transition to Kiana Verdugo, who's our in athletics support area. And Kiana, have you talk a little bit about types of supports and preparation for our student athletes. There's been some questions come in about move-in and those types of things, but no, you can provide some perspective on other types of support and expectations for our student athletes.
Yeah, for sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Kiana Verdugo. I serve as the Associate Athletic Director for Compliance and Operations. It's kind of a mouthful, but with that, I oversee a lot of our rules, eligibility, but I also get to work with a lot of different campus partners to help enhance and make sure that our student athletes have a great experience while they're at Alma College. So the biggest thing, and it's been mentioned by a couple other folks, a lot of the information will come from their coaches if they are planning to participate. So they should definitely be on the lookout for any information if they're moving in early. But it's also an opportunity where a lot of coaches are starting to connect incoming students with current student athletes on the team so that they can start building those relationships before they even get onto campus. Two very important things that will take place in the summer is the required paperwork. So there's two sets and they come from different folks. So the first one is any NCAA compliance forms, but also our student athlete handbook. Those types of things will come from me and it'll be emailed to their Alma email address in early July. They came out a little bit late last year, so it could even be mid-July. And then the other piece is all of the health and physicals, things like that will come from our head athletic trainer. Both of those things are required to be completed before they can participate in any athletic related activity. So that's incredibly important that they're on the lookout for it and complete it by the due dates that are noted. But myself and our athletic director, Sarah Deering, understand that it's kind of difficult to navigate. So we've worked with Lauren, will actually be at Tartan 101, not Tartan 101, I spoke incorrectly, Becoming a Scott Day, to make sure that we can help people work through any issues that they may be having. And we'll actually have laptops available to help navigate those things. And I know they can be tricky. We run into various technological issues. My contact information is in all the required paperwork that goes out, as well as Catherine. So if there's any questions, we are more than willing to assist navigate that. And then once we kind of get on to campus, there's a lot of different supports that they'll have from myself. And another thing I'm really excited about is I'm working with Dr. Phil Andre to also bring in some other support systems to help our first year student athletes kind of understand what time commitments are, what's expected of them in the classroom, and how to navigate that. And that's something that we're planning to unveil this fall. So your student should definitely be on the lookout for additional information related to that. We're also going to have an all athlete kind of kickoff where we get all of our compliance stuff out of the way early in the year too, which will be another opportunity for your students to get an idea of what's expected of them throughout the year while also having a good time. Another important support system that I think is important to note is our student athlete advisory committee. Our student leaders, but they're also great peer support. They are great advocates for our student athletes, and they work very closely with myself, other administrators across campus to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our students. So that's some peer support that our first years receive. And then again, once they're here, we have a pretty open door policy with our athletics administrators, especially our athletic director, Sarah. She's more than willing to meet with any students and often parents if there's any concerns that need to be addressed. I think when I looked at the pre-submitted questions, a lot of them were about early move-ins and arrivals, and I know we touched on that a little bit. We're still finalizing some of the dates, but I saw that men's soccer was a question. So men's soccer right now, we're looking at August 19th. But like I said, this information will come from their coaches with exactly what's expected, when to move in, and things like that. So that's kind of a quick spiel, but there are a lot of different layers of support that we provide our student athletes with the help of everyone that spoke previously to me.
Thanks, Kiana. Certainly other questions that you might have, but I know that a couple of our current parents who are on are parents of student athletes. And so would ask you to sort of offer your perspective on how that transition occurred for your student athlete. Maybe Dave and Liz, or Jody, you might want to speak to that as well. So your experience, kind of that transition for your student athlete.
Hi, sure. Happy to speak. Our son, Andrew, he'll be an incoming junior this year. He's on the swim team. Communication came directly to him from his coach. They assisted early on in his freshman year with assigning those early move-in dates, making sure he had all this paperwork in. If anything was missing, they always followed up directly with him. And additionally, as far as the move-in, they also helped coordinate amongst the team for roommates. He didn't have one specifically that he knew, a fellow incoming student that he wanted to roommate with. So I would just encourage you to have your student reach out to their coach if they have some things like that they would like to be partnered or paired with someone, even though they don't know them. It's nice, especially with swim, getting up at 5 a.m. to have a roommate who is also considerate of that same time commitment.
Also, the ride sharing, the swim team facilitated some of that, so they could, coordinate coming home for Thanksgiving, and we'd pick up, at a certain drop-off point and coordinate the ride back and all that. So the sports aspect really helped with a lot of, that type of thing.
Okay. Great, thanks. Any other parents or current parents want to share a perspective on athletics transitions or experience with that?
I can share.
Go for it, Shirley. Thanks.
Okay. Our daughter will be a sophomore this fall. She's in the swim and dive program too. And we were just very impressed at how Nick communicated with the athletes, but he didn't leave the parents out. He did a very nice job. A new coach with a freshman kid. We were a little bit nervous, but he did just a marvelous job of communicating with the kids, keeping them safe in practice, keeping them updated, and still did a very nice job with the parent piece of keeping us in the loop with what was going on. So.
Great, thanks, Shirley. I know there's one question posted about a move-in date for baseball. Kiana, I'm not sure baseball would have an early move-in date in the fall, but.
Yep, nope, you're correct. Most of our early arrivals are related to and based off of when they're allowed to start practicing with the rules that our governing body set. So baseball, since they can't start until much later in the year, they'll move in as directed with the rest of their first year students. And one last thing I'd add, because I think Shirley made a good point, a lot of our coaches will try to keep parents in the loop, but something that a lot of them have started more recently is creating newsletters that they'll share with parents, family, supporters, alumni throughout the year. So it's another great way that our coaches help keep our parents and supporters engaged.
Okay, wonderful. So I know another question, kind of shifting a little bit, but a question came in about, do we have a particular parents weekend or parent day, parent and family day? And we do. And this year it's going to be, we haven't set the date. We're kind of looking at our full schedule of activities. It's going to be either October 23rd or October 30th. We try to schedule that on a day when there's a number of sporting events as well as performing arts events scheduled on that. So we're still putting the schedule together on some of our performing arts groups. So we will get that out to you as soon as we have that set, but that does happen in the fall each year. And we invite parents and family members to come to campus, showcase a lot of the opportunities. In some ways, we kind of think about it in terms of, what parents have, or it used to be sort of take your child to work day. Well, this is take your parent to college day, and their chance to invite you to campus, show you around, get you into some of maybe the lab spaces that they're participating in, introduce you to some of the faculty members who they have, and just really celebrate their time here on campus. So we'll let you know for sure which one of those two dates that will be. Also want to take this time, I'll continue to put, Laura posted the Scots and Sibs. So that's if your student has a sibling, inviting those siblings to campus in November, the weekend of the 5th to the 7th. And that will be a lot of campus programming for younger siblings as well to invite them and get them some exposure and spend some time on campus. So I want to open it up to our parent panel. So those folks that are on, so you've heard from a few people, Jody Cowan, whose daughter Courtney, and then Shirley, who you just heard from, Danielle, they're from DeWitt, Michigan, Liz and Dave Smith, who you heard from, are from Milan, and then Don, who you heard from earlier, daughter Sophia is from East Lansing. So invite any of you to add some additional perspective about your transition with your student coming in back when they were a first-year student. Any insights you'd like to share with our incoming families at this point, and invite you to also post continued questions if there's anything else we haven't covered yet. So please enter that in the chat and we'll get to those questions.
I guess I'll just say that
Go ahead, Shirley.
Go ahead, Jody. I'll go quick. I was blown away by the communication piece. President Abernathy did such a marvelous job of keeping us up to date if something big needed to be communicated, monthly newsletters. It was just nice to know what was going on. I didn't have to depend on my freshman who was busy with this new lifestyle. It was just wonderful. The communication piece made my mama heart feel good.
Yeah, I would second that, especially again, last year, pandemic, very odd year. And I even as a parent kind of felt that Alma, small town, small college, just family feel. And I'm a person, I will pick up the phone and I will find somebody to ask a question, and the staff and the support services are amazing. So if you have questions, I mean, parent stuff, I think you can direct through Bill, but our admissions counselor, I had her on speed dial and she was very patient with me. So if you have questions, don't sit on them. Just pick up the phone or send an email. They're always more than happy to help or find you the right person. So take advantage of a small school. I don't think that's the case in some of the bigger campuses.
I was going to piggyback on that about the small school, and I'm sure it's not just unique to our son and his program, but he's actually looking at purchasing a new computer. And just interestingly, he came home from work yesterday and mentioned that he was emailing back and forth with a couple of his professors talking about options and did they have any idea of a good place to do some research, and just immediately got here, call this person, or here's a link to something that might help you out. And I just know, I'm not picking on a larger school, but I know at larger schools, you may not be able to get your professor to answer you. Not that he was looking for a quick turnaround, but it was almost immediate. And so just very appreciative of that relationship building that happens at Alma, every year, not just your freshman year, but as an incoming junior, I know he's set up for success, certainly with the professors that he's made these relationships with.
And it should be noted, this isn't just any old computer. This is a gaming computer.
Yeah, right.
He's really got this connection with one of the professors there about the specs and how to get the most bang for the buck.
Yeah.
And I would echo the sentiments that you've just heard. The experience that our daughter has had and that we then as a family have shared has really been an embrace. She feels as though she's part of just this really big family in Alma, and her two older siblings that have gone to much larger schools have been a little bit in awe that she has these relationships with her instructors and that her instructors actually know her name. And that she talks with them, offline, so to speak, and it's just a very rich relationship-based environment. So
good. I know there was a questions posted earlier about so making payments for bills and some financial aid, and we'll get to that in just a minute because I'm sure that's on other people's minds. But just any other questions generally about the new transitioning as a new student, orientation, becoming a Scott Day, any of those things that are out there yet that we haven't touched on? Okay, feel free to post that, but Amanda, I'm going to jump back to you and ask you to maybe touch a little bit about, again, when people can anticipate to see those bills arriving, when the payments are due and payment processes, as well as any applications for student loans.
So not unexpectedly, we get lots of questions around financial aid, scholarships, payments, things of that nature. So I'm going to cover a number of questions that were submitted in advance, kind of in one swoop and spiel, so that you all can kind of have an idea of the process and what we do and how we work through this with Alma. The number one thing is that every single person on this call has an admissions representative whose entire job is to help you through this transition and process. We also have a great team in financial aid, and I think a lot of folks are aware that we are doing individual sessions for families with financial aid as well. So you can have one-on-one time to sit down and talk about your family situation. So the way that Alma works in terms of scholarships and financial aid, like any other institution, it is specific to your family situation. So the scholarships are specific to your student, the need-based aid is specific to your family situation, and those pieces come together in that full scholarship and aid package. And so we will help work through that with you individually with your families. And so there is no one set, this is exactly what each person is going to see, but the deadlines and timeline is the same for everybody. So we bill twice a year. So that is in August and December, and that is for about 30 days before the start of classes. We have a number of payment plans you can select. You can also decide to put puzzle pieces together in whatever way works for your family. So it can be outside scholarships, it can be some being paid in payments, it can be some that's done with student loans, and you can put that together in what works best for your family, and the admissions team and the financial aid team can help you through that process. So that is something that we will help you individually with as a family. You will do student loan applications in the summer. So we're getting close to that. It's about 60 days out, Lexi, is that correct? I think 60 days is right. So around 60 days out is when you're going to do that, which is coming up pretty quickly, which I think that might be sad for some folks, but that is actually coming up really soon. And so that's when we're going to start that student loan process. The exception to that is if you're doing what's called private loans, so loans through a bank or through a credit union, they will have their own processes, but for the federal loans, you'll do those pieces about 60 days out. The other piece that people had questions about was outside scholarships, like what do students do if they have checks that are written to the college and to the student. I recommend you bring that with you on becoming a Scott Day. A lot of times those are co-signed checks, so the student has to sign and the college needs to sign. Don't super recommend mailing that, but if that's necessary, it can happen. But at Becoming a Scott Day, offices are open. You can stop by and pass that along to us. You can also drop it off at the admissions office or financial aid office at any point in time. You can also let us know in advance it's coming, and then that way they can just the student can bring it with them at move-in, and that's fine too. We'll work with you kind of based on the situation. We also had a couple questions about work study and work. So work study is a federal program, and what that means is that if your family's need is at a certain level, your paycheck at Alma College is paid for by the federal government rather than by the college. We employ both work study and non-work study students on campus. There are a handful of jobs that are work study only, so they're very specific and a very small number. Generally, that is just an opportunity and a benefit to a student. It does not define whether or not they can find employment on campus. What I suggest, and I'm going to ask my friends, either Laura or Phil, to do this for me, is students can go on Handshake. If they can put the link for Handshake in, Laura, you're nodding. So if someone can put the link for Handshake into the chat, that'd be great. And they can see all of our on-campus jobs. The student will log in with their normal Alma College login information. They will put Alma College as an employer, and they'll see everything that's available on campus. We hire all year round. So students can go in and look for opportunities all year. There are lots of opportunities on campus. For example, admissions employs about 40 students. Kiana, how many does athletics employ? 100? I mean, I feel like you all have so many student staff members. So we have lots of opportunities on campus for students to work on campus, whether it's through a position that's related to their future career intent or a position that they think is a good fit for them. That would be a good opportunity for them on campus. I think I covered all the financial aid stuff, and I do want to talk about the orientation piece, but I want to pause beforehand.
There was one question that just asked, is there a communication coming to parents or students through email for federal student loan application. They just want to make sure they don't miss that.
Yeah, so we will communicate. So we'll make sure that you have what you need. And I don't want to say that we are going to, we're borderline too much in the reminders. So I'm not saying that you can't miss it or forget it, but if you are reading emails, connecting with us on a regular basis, communicating, Don smiled and nodded. So I think that means that I described it well.
I would dare say as a parent, you don't borderline over communicate. It's very good communication. Well informed.
Yes. Yep. So we do send reminders and we will help you at any time. So if ever you think you've missed something, just give your admissions representative a call, a text, an email, and we'll make sure you're all caught up and everything's good. And your student does have a checklist on their Alma College portal, so they can go into Inside Alma and kind of go through that checklist. Other questions about loans or payments or anything like that?
None that I see in the chat.
So we had 2 more questions in advance that I just wanted to make sure that we covered. One is around becoming a Scott Day and orientation, and if someone is coming from out of town and they need overnight accommodations. So I hopefully Laura can pop this in the chat for me because she's been my chat queen with all these links, but we have a number of overnight accommodations around the town of Alma. We have a couple specific that we recommend, and so we do list them out for folks that they can see some options, including on-campus accommodations. If you are an out-of-state student, we do have additional support. So if you are an out-of-state student coming in for becoming a Scott Day, please let us know, and then we will actually help with making those arrangements. We will always help you with guiding you towards arrangements and setting things up for you. And so that will always be something that admissions can help you with. But out-of-state students, we have some extra provisions for to assist them to come to becoming a Scott Day and to be a part of that experience. And the other one that's sort of orientation related is about what to bring to campus. And Laura did put in the chat, I saw that. So there is a packing list that we recommend, and that was in the chat. And that goes, your student will know what they most need, but they will probably be wrong. So they will probably think they need every piece of clothing they've ever owned, everything that they've ever loved, and they will need some of those things. And some of those things they'll never touch again, and they'll bring it home at Thanksgiving, and then they'll never come back. As someone who brought 2 cars worth of stuff to college and then left with only 1 trunk full, I learned my lesson. But what we really recommend is listed on that for students so they have an idea of kind of what's most needed. I also recommend talking to your roommate. So it is important for roommates to communicate always, and this is a great easy way to start. What are you bringing to college? Is an easy conversation to start with someone, but that way it allows them to not bring 2 futons or not have 2 refrigerators, 2 big TVs. Like, you can have some communication to make sure that you're working together to have what you most need for your entire room.
Something to add to that too, and it's not 100% confirmed, but we are trying to work with the Meyer in town to run an event on move-in day with Meyer for students and their families. So if there are some last minute things that you forget, and or like Amanda said, I know when I came to Alma, I also brought a lot of stuff, and my roommate showed up with a U-Haul, and our parents were laughing because they were like, yeah, this is not going to fit in your room. So sometimes it is easier to hedge your bets too and bring the like main necessities, and know there is a Meyer and a Walmart in town if you do forget things. And we are going to try to partner with the Meyer to run something during that move-in time frame where students and their families could go and hopefully get some discounts and pick up some things if you forget anything. So that is the hope. It's not 100% confirmed, but we are working on it.
And just to clarify for those of you who are not Michiganders or kind of local Midwest, Meyer is a kind of a local equivalent to a Walmart. It's a large a store that has groceries, but also home goods and every clothing and all of those things that you might need to outfit your residence hall room. So I want to be mindful of our time, but also any of our current parents, anything to add on? Amanda and Laura, I think, covered the move-in process and what you need to bring, and the checklist is there. But any words of wisdom from those of you that have moved students in at least once, and some of you several times now? words of advice other than be careful of lifting things, lift with your legs, but anything else that you want to share?
I was just going to say that, and I assume that this year will maybe be back to a little more normal, but the amount of help that was available was surprising. We thought we would be doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and Alma, between athletics and some other groups that come early, they were all on hand, willing to carry things up to the second and third floor for us, which was great. I turned around and pretty much the car was unloaded. So that was very helpful.
And with also last year with the COVID situation, all the communication and checking in and the testing and all the signage was really clear. And I thought it was going to be a big hassle to move them in last year, and it went really well. It was smooth.
Yeah, I'd agree. Communication was great. I'm looking forward to more of those football players helping me carry stuff this year. And I know I'm stereotyping, but with a girl who is an athlete, they underestimate how much they're going to want to buy at the bookstore or obtain through their sports teams or even at Meyer. Yeah, we moved her in with one truckload and it took us 2 to get her home. So tell them not to overpack. It piles up.
And I would emphasize the connecting with the new roommate and deciding who's bringing what, because a dorm room doesn't need multiple of everything.
So we did have a question in about becoming a Scott Day. Amanda, I see you just posted there. So yeah, becoming a Scott Day is one day of orientation this summer where we really start getting the basics taken care of. And then Tartan 101 that Laura mentioned is the more complete kind of orientation when students move to campus, and we spend several days right before the start of the fall semester getting folks acclimated and connected to campus and those types of things. But it's the one-day event, and Laura talked about those in July. There are a series of in-person, but we do have an online option for those folks that can't make it to campus. There's a completely online option for that, to be a part of that. And is there, I believe there may be a piece related to parents and connected in with that, right, Laura?
Yes, for which one? Becoming a Scott Day?
Becoming a Scott Day.
Yes, yep, there are student and parent tracks for Becoming a Scott Day. So parents will hear from a variety of professionals on campus. So we'll have a panel with housing, residence life, dining, campus safety, Title IX. We've also got some academic success and support pieces. Phil, who's on this call, and one of our other colleagues, Danny Rossman, will be there. Parents will hear from faculty. So Dr. Danny Wasserman will be talking about academic life at the college and what parents can expect and how to support their students. And then we'll have some various choice sessions. So we'll have our diversity and inclusion office doing a presentation. Athletics is doing a presentation. If you have a student athlete, how to support them. We've got a presentation, campus and community opportunities panel. So a variety of opportunities both on and off campus and ways your student can engage. So lots of ways that parents can get information that they need and get connected to various faculty and staff members at the college. So
thanks. Some additional questions, Bobby. We know that some of you need to sign off, and feel free to do that. We are recording this and can make that available. But also, again, as Amanda said, please, if you have any questions, connect with your admissions representative. They can either answer those questions or connect you with a staff person on campus that will. You can also at any time send a message to family@elma.edu, and we'll make sure you connect with the right folks on campus. There was a question about the size of a refrigerator. We hit that 4.6 cubic feet or smaller. And the rules about air conditioners, those are again accommodation that Phil talked about and that Anne can work with around medical needs. We know there are some students with some medical situations that they need air conditioning, and so we can work with them on an individual basis to do that. And so should be in touch with either Phil in that group, or with Ann around the type of accommodations that folks need that may associated with an air conditioning unit. So, and as mentioned, Laura put in
favorite question.
Our staff.
There's a question. Oh, there's a question about parent groups. That's like your favorite question.
There's the parent groups, I think was related to orientation. I'm not sure, I may have missed it, but we do have our, and obviously representatives tonight are members of our parent and family board. And we have that board comprised of parents from each class, entering class at Alma to be a support and a resource throughout the time here. And so we certainly support that. We offer information sessions. Some of you have heard from these folks at various admissions events, but also with our parent and family weekend. And throughout the year, we have that. And so if you are interested in doing that, once you get settled in, we'll do an outreach to folks if you're interested in being a part of that support. And again, as I mentioned, we have our family@alma.edu email account as an opportunity for you to connect. If you have a question, you want a response from another parent, just as a parent-to-parent communication, we'll set those up and make sure you're put in touch with someone. I would also iterate that we have a parent and family newsletter that goes out quarterly to our current families, and that just provides kind of things to be thinking about, support information, help you stay in touch with the information that maybe your student's getting, but you haven't heard yet. We make sure to try and provide that as well into some other communications that you heard from earlier that come from President Abernathy, occasionally some updates, but we send that quarterly newsletter out to families as well. So I think we've come to the end of our time. We do have a third session planned for this. I believe July 13th is our next information night for incoming families. We'll cover some additional topics geared more directly to that move-in time. And what are those things you need to be thinking of in those last couple of weeks before you come and arrive to campus. So hope you'll be able to join us at that time. An email will be going out from the admissions office about that that you can sign up and get more information about when that is going to be and how to sign up. But keep an eye out for that. Again, glad to have you with us. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you do have additional questions. And wanted to say thanks to all of our staff and our parent volunteers who are on this evening to provide the information and respond to questions. Thank you for giving your time and supporting our incoming families. So with that, we'll say goodnight and go Scots.